Welcome to episode 2 of the Friends and Strangers podcast. This episode was super dope. I had the homie Bushido Garvey, also known or better known as now BrandonEVWhite. Super dope convo. We tackled everything from faith to his beginnings as a teacher, as an MC, even his feelings on 2020. Super dope brother, super educated, a lot of insight, a lot of words. So hope y'all enjoy. Peace. Yeah, we're gonna get started in a second. I definitely appreciate you though, man. I feel like this is gonna be a bomb episode.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good conversation. You know, especially since we just first of all we know each other for a very long time, and then we just got done working together.
Right.
So it's like a good perfect.
All right, so we're gonna get started. It's probably gonna be some noise in the background, but
that's just good. All the more organic the conversation.
Facts. All right, man. Welcome to the Friends and Strangers podcast. I go by the name of LAVA The FreshNerd. The goal of this podcast is kind of like, I feel like we got a ton of friends, but then there's even more strangers. And it seems like sometimes a stranger could be one question away from being a friend, and vice versa. Like, it don't take much to get in between the two. So I'm trying to bridge the both. And I just think, like, in this time, we kind of need to be a little closer anyway. So I want to bring on a lot of my friends that I know, because I know a lot of dope people. And then I'm hoping to grab some strangers in the meantime that I don't know that probably is equally as awesome. So what I typically do, I start this off with 2 questions. And I just want to get your insight on them. First one is, who is one stranger that you would say you're proud of or inspires you?
Ooh, that's a good question. One stranger that I'm proud of and inspires me.
Or inspire you.
Or inspires me.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize this at the depth that I needed to until he passed, Chadwick Boseman. You know, I always admired him and respected him ever since like that Jackie Robinson movie. And all his roles, he always had a lot of integrity in how he acted, and how he committed to the role.
His approach.
And he just always kind of moved humbly, right? And, you know, was still able to stay humble despite being the most cherished Black comic book character of all time, right? And yeah, like he just a great actor, great spirit, and you know, he's gone. Like for a while, I wasn't able to watch anything. I didn't want to hear news about it. But the way that he moved with his integrity and his humbleness, and the way he just kind of grit through a pain and stay spiritually grounded on top of that throughout that journey, like that's something that meant a lot to me. For sure.
Yeah, his death really impacted me, more so than I even thought it would. Like, I call myself really emotional about it. I feel kind of emotional about it right now because the way he endured through, like, to find out after the fact that he was fighting through all of that, it kind of like realigned me in the sense of like what my purpose is, the importance of it, and seeing how it can affect so many people through your pain. That really got to me, man. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Second question is, who is a friend that you're proud of or inspired you?
I would say out of many, you know, one of them would be my homie Jeremy Smith, aka Jay Hustle.
Okay.
Jeremy, or Jay, is an elite educator, organizer, leader, and MC. You know, all those things I try to be, but like, you know, Jeremy is a great model for all those things, right? And, you know, he's making some buzz with his music while building a program from scratch for the youth of Rochester to become literate in ways that affirm their identities.
Okay.
Right? Like, because we both come out of this freedom school model of teaching literacy where the skills you get to become literate are centered around your experiences and your cultural identities.
Wow.
Right. So, you know, like he basically trained me through that like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now in the middle of all of this, he's still putting out, you know, albums, and he's still working on this program. So he's definitely inspirational for me. And I'm proud to say that's my boy.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I hope to maybe reach out to him someday. Hopefully get him on here, because that's powerful, especially the educating part. The music, we know we love that, but being able to teach is a different gift. So with that being said, we kind of skipped it, and I think I do it intentionally now, but who are you? Can you introduce yourself? Kind of give me like a synopsis of how you got to the point you at musically, educational wise, just all of it.
Yeah, and Lava, I could talk. So one of my goals is trying to stay on topic and as focused as possible. So if you got to reel me in, just reel me in real quick.
Man, that's why I did a podcast and not a radio show, because we got time, bro. We got time.
True. That makes sense. Well, you know, I'm BrandonEVWhite. Depending on how you know me, and what context. There are times where I'm Brandon. There are times where I'm B. There are times where I'm Mr. White if I'm, you know, teaching kids or youth on stages and in MC circles in the area. I've been historically known as Bushido Garvey, right? You know, moving into a new use of name, BrandonEVWhite. Also B-side B, Glitch Tuxtable, right? The typical rapper stuff, bunch of names, right? But yeah, like, so, you know, I grew up in Rochester, New York, and, you know, a big product of hip hop. And it's kind of what, in addition to having the privilege of having very like educated parents, you know what I'm saying? My father's a lawyer, my mother's a librarian, right? So, you know, that laid a foundation in terms of like, you know, embracing my surroundings and my culture. But then also for like a contemporary lens, like a youth lens, hip hop allowed me to like, you know, form my own identity with that, right? And even in scenarios where I wasn't worried about trying to be literate or culturally informed or any of that, like it's what hip hop kept me grounded in that, right? Hip hop helped me see purpose in whatever I was learning in school, right? You know, like for example, if the English teacher is talking about the concept of illusion, right? And she or he may use some sort of dry Eurocentric version of what an illusion is. I'm like, wait a minute, Nas did that in this song.
Right.
Wait a minute, you know, like Ghostface did it in this song. So I know what you're talking about. Let me just, so it gave me a lens to kind of clear out like the biased instruction around these types of concepts.
Okay.
Right? You know, because hip hop has always kept people literate and knowledgeable, right? As long as it's been around, because it came around during a time where the education system in the Bronx and in New York City was total trash. Right? It wasn't, nobody was learning, nobody was doing what they were supposed to do. But it provided a curiosity around words, right? There are people who dropped out of high school or middle school whose vocabulary is better than some people in graduate school. Why? Because of hip hop, right? The knowledge of the world, right? Because of hip hop, right? Even if they may have dropped out and they never, you know, got a degree or whatever have you, right? So, you know, that gave me an authentic purpose of like why I wanted to learn. And then it gave me a purpose of why I would want to be an educator. So, you know, like we just got done talking about hustle, right? Both of us kind of have this parallel thing where it's just like, we're educators who rhyme and we're rhymers that educate, right? Like, so the two kind of go hand in hand, and at times one may take precedence over the other, which is probably one of the reasons why I don't have as much material as I could, because I have like a decent amount of material, but like not too much. But thank you. But like, you know, it'll probably be like on a Griselda level of material put out if if I didn't have to balance those particular things, right? So that's kind of been my walk. You know, we've met through that walk. I've met a lot of awesome people through that process. You know what I'm saying? Can you believe the Dubland era was 10 years ago? Started like 10 years ago?
Man.
It wasn't until I was thinking about some of our interaction where I was like, wait, I've known this man for like 10 years.
Yeah, holy. Man.
You know, so
I realize you've been rhyming for a while.
Yeah, man.
To get onto, because that's interesting. You just coming from our generation and our peers, you don't hear that a lot, and I don't really want to focus on it as if it's an exception, because it's not really. It's just it was made to seem that way. But your parents, you had a dad that was a lawyer and a mom that's a librarian. I swear, like if you would have told me that before I ever heard you make music, it would have been like, oh, I can clearly see that. So to find out after 10 years, that's amazing. Just because, but how does each aspect, because for those that don't and haven't heard your music, you can clearly hear the importance of words. And you can kind of see how that plays in both as a librarian, kind of a keeper of books, and then a lawyer, someone that uses words to argue a case and defend, and vice versa in a court of law. How do you think that affected your importance of words and your style of music, and to go on your teaching style?
I think, because actually I wrote, there was a song I did on Unprofitable Servants. The line was, see if I can remember this. It was, son of a lawyer and a librarian. When they split, it created a variance. Oh, I forgot the rest of it. But basically it was like it was a representation of like how, of valuing knowledge and representing it. Right, because you know the lawyers, that's legal representation, and then you know librarians curate and collect information and make it accessible for other people.
Yeah.
So I would say that with the curiosity, right, like of being like an independent, lifelong learner, right, like that comes from my mother, who was the librarian, right, and also kind of being low key with it as well, like kind of just like, you know, reading, just being okay with just being introverted about it. Like, I get that from her. And I would say, and that kind of reflects in the references and maybe some of the language of how I do things, in addition to like, you know, MCs that had that same value, right? Whether it be anybody from Wu or, you know, Doom, rest in peace, or Nas or A$AP Rock, who was a big influence on me early on. And in terms of the lawyer piece, I think that's the passion piece. Not even so much of not even so much the like the articulation piece, right? But like the passion piece for whatever you're presenting. Because I've never seen my father do his job, right? Like in terms of like him actually being in the courtroom, breaking down his arguments, et cetera, et cetera. But I have seen him be very passionate about, you know, argumentation, proving points, and passionate about justice, right? I've actually seen how he's moved with that in community-based endeavors more than I've actually seen him do that in the court. So, you know, like I think that piece was foundational for me. And so I was able to demonstrate that passion for like justice and just passion for whatever you're putting out there by seeing that, right, coming up. That definitely had a major impact, and just valuing where I'm from too, because you know, like we didn't have that many babysitters. We was always getting dragged around to whatever he was doing.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So, so I think that played its role in helping me be an MC that you know, value information as applied to me in my context, and really, you know, loving where I'm from in the process and representing where I'm from in the process, even if it's not popular to do. And one, it's not popular to, you know, be an MC from Rochester, New York. We know this. And then two, it's definitely not popular to be an MC from the South Wedge. You know, or like growing up, you know, because most of us were like, well, so I had both, but they were split. They split as a team, right? Which I think actually it was weird because the way I grew up, like it wasn't like I stayed with my mother and then summers was with my father, or stay with my mother and my father got Fridays or something like that. It wasn't that, right? It was literally every other day. Okay. So and they were very different parents, right? So you know, on Monday there was one norm, and then on Tuesday there was another norm. Right. So it allowed me to really get this healthy kind of feed from how both of them kind of interact, and I've kind of developed like this hybrid of how they both are, right? So and so that was a little actually like the commonality piece was like, oh, are you gonna see just one parent, or you only see one on occasion? Okay, like, you know, so but the uncommonness of it was like being in the wedge and growing up. Because like growing up, you know this, like it was either east side, west side, right? If you're black or brown, it's like east side, west side, where you from? And South Wedge, right? Like, you know, which at the time was a pretty eclectic place to kind of grow up. You know, a lot of different walks of life, especially going to the rec center and school 12 at the time. And now it's more like a hipster utopia. But it still wasn't a common thing. You know what I'm saying? It was like the Staten Island of Rochester.
That does make sense.
You know, so yeah, that was the difference in how I came up.
Man, that's powerful. Just one more on that aspect. It kind of sounds like you come from Black excellence. And I find that a lot of our culture, a lot of our peers are striving for Black excellence because we might have not necessarily seen it. How does that feel on your end? Is it a strive for Black excellence, or how does it feel to come? It's the question I would ask Michael Jordan's sons. Like, how does it feel to come from something so pinnacle when you're trying to define who you are? Is it a burden? Like, how is that?
I hesitate to use the word burden because of how I got to grow up. I got to see what real burdens are. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of what real struggle is, not to discount whatever, you know, I went through or whatever other people who have more, you know, access and privilege have gone through, right? Like, because everybody goes through pain and trials and tribulations. That's just the nature of life. But in terms of like a hopelessness, like for example, right? There was a point in growing up where like economically, my mom's didn't have it. Like, you know, she never had it, so to speak, right? She never was like well off or nothing like that, because librarians, smart people, but don't be making money. So there was a time where she really, really, truly didn't have it. But guess what? That wasn't my everyday. Whenever she didn't have it, the next day I'd go with a parent that did. Right? Wow. So I never experienced that hopelessness, that glass, that poverty is. Right? You know what I'm saying? Not to say I don't know what it's like not to have, but I never experienced. There was always an escape hatch from that. Right? So I ground myself in that. But to answer your question, in terms of like dealing with that, like it's not it provided its own unique challenge, right? Because like when there's such a narrow view of what Black is growing up,
absolutely.
Right? You know, because we're so isolated, sometimes from each other, like there's this belief that Black is just one thing. It talks one way, it listens to one thing one way, it acts one way, and does one thing, right? So, you know, in a song that I put out for the 30 Rock, I said I was a South Ave oddity on a West Side Odyssey when I would go to Wilson, right? you know, because, you know, everybody was basically, you know, like 5X, 5X, you know, jerseys.
I was one of them.
You know, yeah. And not to say I never wore oversized stuff myself, like the white tees. Never say I never had like a, you know, extra large fitted, because I definitely had some of that stuff. But I also it wasn't popular like raucous Soulquarians. You know what I'm saying? Like the Roots, you know, when you're in middle school or even in high school at that point. So I was like the kid who had an afro and a backpack in high school when it was Dipset, G-Unit, you know, D Block only, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it provided its own unique tests.
Yeah.
Right.
Afro was monumental, man.
Yeah. It definitely was. It became like a identity marker for me. You know what I'm saying? So it was different being a Black person, growing up a Black person who was also just had a lot of different interests too, right? Like, but it got to a point where people understood that that's where I was or who I was.
Okay.
But I don't even know if I answered your question that well, but like,
no, you did. You did.
So, but yeah, it definitely is something where you have to, you know, worry about you being you, and that's it. Like all the other distractions around who other people are or who your parents are or have been, you got to worry about being you and handling yourself in your situations or the situations you want to be in. So.
Yeah, that's powerful. And the reason I asked it is because growing up and becoming an adult, a lot of it you find is you have to unlearn a lot of things that might have not been as beneficial to you as once thought was. Even if you could have had the greatest parents on the planet, they probably had something that just wasn't going to work for you in this time. So I think as a people, we have to get back to finding who we are. That's individually is what I mean, like, because who you are dictates what you can become. And we was gifted. I say we were ordained parents, and they were designed to impart things in us that we needed for now. I heard, not to get churchy, we probably get to that later, but I heard a pastor once say, we were born for the times that were needed. So some of the stuff that we need may not have been what was needed from our parents, so to speak. So to hear how you became some of who you are today, I think that was powerful.
Yeah, no, and one, I probably had this in some project at some point, but I always say, like, you know, my parents raised me, but Rochester trained me. Right? Like, you know, because our parents aren't the only people that are only things that raise us, or our lack of parents aren't the only things that raise us, like our environment. That's why, you know, the old proverb is it takes a village to raise a child, because like it's the parents and the environment, right? You know, so, you know, that I was able to get a well-rounded experience because of who my parents were. So there was, in terms of trying to navigate and have my own lane of stuff or be my own lane of stuff, like Rochester was very, you know, helpful as a collective with that. Like maybe I wasn't on one side all the time or one side the other time. I understood all sides, right? Like, because if you're from the Wedge, it's first of all so close to downtown, right? But like chances are high that either because of the schools and because of the rec, other people from other parts of the city are coming over there, or you have to go other places to link with your peoples. So I was able to understand what, you know, the north side was like, or the northwest, technically like Loud, Dewey, whatever. I was able to understand what the south side, the southwest side was like, right? Just crossing the bridge over to go to Wilson or to see people, whatever. And definitely with the northeast was like, because I had a lot of friends over on the east side. So, man, it was.
Like just the way our city is, it's even as you can be super sheltered as possible. Unfortunately, especially in our culture, you can't really hide us from certain things. So your point of Rochester training you, like, for example, you might have seen somebody get robbed just going to school one day, or unfortunately you might have heard so-and-so getting clapped, or somebody fought so-and-so. Like, you're gonna unfortunately see those type of things versus suburban community or suburban village where kind of everything is contained within that one bubble. It might be years before you see a fight or something like that. Where in inner city, and that's not just Rochester, but I think specifically with our community, because we're a smaller big city where you're gonna rush across certain things. You might go to the LAVA Festival and see a brawl. So
right. Yep.
So at that point, let's get to kind of, was it music first, then teaching? Or teaching, then music? And if so, kind of give the start of where that happened at.
Yeah, Mars McGowan, an MC from here, like he had a line in one of his projects, I forget which one, where he talked about using what he learned in English class to write his rhymes.
Yeah, shout out to Mars.
Yeah, good dude. And he, like, that process is like similar to what I had experienced too, where it was just like you're formulating yourself in the hip hop culture, right? And when you formulate your understanding of hip hop, then you formulate your identity in hip hop, and then you formulate how you create in hip hop, right? So I was like in the identity moving into creation phase, right? Well, actually, like refining how I was becoming a creator.
Okay.
Right. And I began to start to see, like we were talking about earlier, like those parallels between what they was talking about in school and what, my culture was talking about. The culture that was educating me, because I talk about this all the time in education. I forget to coin the term, but like there's between schooling and education. Right. And sometimes schooling can help with your education, or sometimes it can hurt it. But in my education was happening a lot outside of school based on my environment, my community, my various layers of cultures, one of them being hip hop. And I was able to take that education into my schooling. Okay. So when they were talking about whatever this Victorian, poet or writer was doing and the devices that he or she was using, I was able to bring my education into the situation. Like, word, this MC did this. Okay. Right. Or even like this hip hop writer did that, because like I was saying before, there was a point in time where I wasn't trying to, like most boys, right? They're not trying to read nothing. They're not trying to, like it just sit still and like read. And what kind of saved me from totally going down the hole with that was buy a magazine subscription. Wow. Right. So I could even be, like look at what they're talking about here and be like, oh, you know what? I read this type of device or this type of style in this review for, Nas Godson or whatever, right? Yeah, like, that's how old I am, right? So that's kind of how I end up. And I end up doing some like projects for ELA class that were based in rap. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I got to figure out where those are. I wonder how great or terrible those are. But yeah, like, so that's kind of how I got into it. And the more I got into it, the more I realized, like, yo, what if I hadn't put two and two together? What if I hadn't, intuitively stumbled upon like how what they talk about here is similar to how they're talking about there. Yeah. Just they're talking about it with a lot of white people who are out of my cultural context, and this is talking about it from a diverse lens. Yeah. What if I never did that, right? So in my mind, that made me think like, well, what would have happened if a teacher would do this actively all the time? Okay. And so that made me think like, okay, well, this may be something I can do. So I was thinking I was either going to be a journalist, because again, I was reading like hip hop, like critiques and literature and magazines, or an MC or an educator, right? And when I started seeing and understanding how literacy is something that is like systemically kept away from us, and it's always been the case since slavery. That was the way that slavery was maintained. Yeah, right? I mean, to go bigger than us, that's just a way to keep a culture. Period. It's right. Yeah. So right, because and to that point, because we were talking about what happened at the Capitol earlier, right? Like, how many of those people are literate, and how many of those people know how to sift through information to figure out what's accurate, false, timely, et cetera, et cetera. How many of them are YouTube scholars that believe whatever QAnon is talking about?
Man, that's a whole
right?
different.
So like, you know, to that point, like literacy is something that is key for you being the captain of your own ship. Right. And I saw how that was strategically kept away from us, and iterations of that just renewed since, you know, slavery. So I was like, you know what, like, this is something I want to do professionally.
Yeah. Man, to that point, I was in a convo last night. I think I was on Clubhouse, and it was about whatever. But it made me realize that today, the way we're with social media and everything, we don't necessarily value scholars anymore, or necessarily critical thinkers, those that are like experts in the field. I don't think we see value in those anymore because, like you said, you can grab something on YouTube, watch a video, and feel like you're an expert on it. And then you can go to your platform and say whatever based on what you just regurgitated from that. And you didn't, there's always been a process to critical thing, to research, to before you can even sometimes publish anything, you would have to go through these millions of steps to make sure that your information was verified, validated, and so on and so forth. So with that being said, man, what you do is unique. It's a gift. I don't know if you recognize it as being able to combine those two, the whitewashed education, and compare it to the Black culture and put it together. That's a gift, and to be able to see there needs to be teaching on this. That's a teaching style that's missing. That's also like a beautiful gift and purpose that it seems like you've honed into. I wanted to jump in because we've had conversations before. Where does your faith jump in and all of that?
Yeah, that and just real quick, I do want to acknowledge that there have been voices and orbs that have pushed my ability to find that intersection and refine that intersection the right way. One of them being hip hop ed, right? Led by Chris Emden, Timothy Jones, a few other folks. This is a community of educators who whose culture is hip hop and wants to make sure that that culture is reflected in how they teach and in the content of what is being taught. So I do want to name and acknowledge that, and allow me to feel less like an alien, right? But now to that point, right? Because this is where I know I might lose some people, but it is what it is. Hip hop is not my God.
Say that again.
Hip hop is not my God. Right? Now, that's the tricky piece, and I'm sure that there's some degree, not to make assumptions, that you can relate to this in terms of you come up, this culture gives you an identity, it gives you a purpose, right? It gives you flavor, right? But then you come across something that tops the order of operations in terms of who you're supposed to be in this natural experience. Right? And in terms of my walk as a Christian, like that actually started happening and imperfectly, obviously, right? But that started, the curiosities around that and my identity in that started happening not that long after I started taking rhyming more seriously as a craft, right? So there was almost like a stunning moment, not almost, there was a stunning moment around like, wait a minute, this isn't my main identity piece. Right? And so it's been, truth be told, it's been this, historically, there's been a struggle with how do you stay, God-fearing, out of line.
Yeah.
While demonstrating, your craft.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And doing it is one thing, right? But like also what circles do you run around with?
Yeah.
Who do you collaborate with?
Yeah.
Right. What services do you use? Right. Like it's this ongoing journey that's often been, I admit it myself, imperfect, but like definitely has improved in terms of how that's reflected in how I move, and even when I say in my music, just because by the way, Unexpected is fire.
Thank you, bro.
and one of the things I like about how you've kind of like dealt with what I'm speaking of is like how clear that transition and that value and that prioritization is in the music, right? Like it's there, clear, and my versions of that tend to be like the same way Wu-Tang would have like, 5% Nation kind of illusions encoded. Yeah. It's kind of like how I would, do how I've been doing basically with Christianity, my Christianity largely, right?
Right.
But like I know that there's a lane for that, but I also know how important the lane is, what you've been doing, which is just making it clear that this is what this is, and this is what my goal is to remain it to be. And there could be tension in that unless you're within the same Christian centered hip hop bubble. Yeah. Right. If your circles, and that's part of me again, how I just growing up, right? Like my circles have always been. I call myself Bushido Garvey, right? Like Garvey, you think it's a blackish kind of movement and power, right? Like, and that's definitely influenced me. But I said in a song called False Conscious, where it's like, my name's Black Perspective, but my life been multi-ethnic, right? I've always had like a diverse kind of friend set. So I could talk to you about this and feel right at home. I could talk to Iron Will about this and feel right at home.
Facts.
But then when, who's always going on? But then when I speak to other people who are so far away from this, it can be a challenge because A, they're not there, and then B, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to evangelize? Right. Or am I going to, I guess exercising the discernment about when evangelizing is important and when just listening is important, or when just sharing your experience is important. Yeah. What if your experience isn't reflecting everything that God wants you to be reflecting anyway? Right. So all those things, and I've had to navigate those spaces at different levels and at different times, in my walk. So,
man, that's so powerful. It's so faceted. When you think about trailblazing, you're creating a door where there wasn't, so to speak. And when I'm looking at it from the internal perspective, if I'm at this wall, looking at this wall, like, okay, I know it's something on the other side, but man, it should be a door here. Like you're gonna feel like it should be certain things, not realizing that part of your purpose was to create that door. Creating that door doesn't necessarily feel the best. Like to sit there like, well, how am I gonna? I don't even have a saw near me right now. How am I gonna get through this door? And that's kind of what it seems like. Not just, it's very peculiar as a hip hop artist, as a Christian, as all of it, trying to maneuver through, like you said, what circle do you grow in? What that, and then also just from I'm relatively new to the Christian walk. It doesn't seem like hip hop was ever welcomed, within not just the Black church or the white, just the church general. The art form has always been a rebel, not just to church but to culture, period. It started off as its own little thing, even within, like, we were discoing, and what is that? What are y'all doing? So add that and multiply it, divide it times how many more. That's how much it was scrutinized to be a Christian artist. I don't know the founders. I'm studying them now of like how Christian hip hop came and so on and so forth. But I can only imagine how tough it had to be to try to figure out, do I perform in the church? Do I go to the open mic? Can I perform in the bar? And that's kind of I think the beauty of our Christian walk is that God knows those things, and he sees those unique paths, and he chooses to use those things to influence people that we could never imagine, all while we're going through it thinking that we're failing, we're doing horrible things.
Right. Facts.
It just doesn't seem like we're doing it the right way, not to even realize that that's kind of by design. That door needed to be created for somebody else to go through.
No, that's definitely real.
So to hear the way you broke it down, that was powerful, and I hope it enlightens some of our brothers, so to speak, that hey, whatever way you finding it and how you doing it, he still can get glory from it. So
Word. To that point, man, like I think that's so important for me to want to hear and other folks to hear, because you can get caught up in, you know, am I doing it right enough, right? And you should be thinking about how aligned you are to what he wants you to do, no doubt, and then following through. But in your missteps or in your learning in that, there's a lot more that could be happening that you don't understand. Like, and when you say that, it makes me think about, even with, I mean, it's been 10 years at least since I've shown, you know, that being a part of my walk. Like, cause like the first project I did, groceries, the J Quest joint was called Christ Meditation and Hip Hop. Right. And it clearly had a lot of those references. And then the second project like had a Bible verse on the cover. Right. So but it's been fascinating. Now that you say that, it's been fascinating to see how I still can I haven't experienced any dismissiveness. Right, I haven't experienced like, oh, that man, he that's gospel. You know, he doing that other ish, right? Like, which is the attitude, right? Which is often the attitude. Yeah. But like, there's still kind of like when I was talking about coming up, where the difference, like standing on your square about the ways that you're different, like produces acceptance and embracing sometimes, right? And I think this is one of those things where it's just like, yeah, this is how he moves. This is what makes him different as an MC. One of the things that makes him different as an MC. All right, that's how he moves. He don't got to be, you know, rejected, you know, or rejected, or any of those things. And let me say too, to see what he's talking about. Right. And I think to your point around the founders, I don't know who the founders are, but I remember, ironically, this is funny. I was going to a party. I was getting picked up by a girl who's now my wife. Right?
Important to say.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. for sure. And she was picking me up to go to this party, and she was listening to this dude named Richie Righteous. Right. And because she had, you know, grew up in the church. I grew up with positive attitudes about God, but I did not grow up in the church. Actually, around the same time as I was becoming hip hop or solidifying my identity, I was still curious around, like, you know, like how God can move, or how God moves. So she was playing this, and I was listening, and I was thinking, because again, my open-mindedness at the time, I'm like, okay, this ain't bad. At least the song that I was hearing, I don't know his whole catalog or nothing like that. I was like, this isn't bad. Like, he's rhyming. Right. But then I knew other people in my circle would be like, what is this? Right. And so I think, and I know there are cats like Ambassadors, Eshawn Burgundy, like these are cats that I'm familiar with that like allow for like the Reach Records, like the Collision Records, like Lecrae, what's the dude's name? Swoop, Andy Guido, all these people, you know what I'm saying, who are beasts, right, on the mic. But I think that they kind of stand on those foundations of like cats who are like, we're gonna take this craft seriously. But we're also going to take our God seriously, and that's going to inform how we take our craft seriously. Yeah, no, that's powerful. Like, unfortunately, my change was kind of abrupt. I went from hip hop being my God to learning about God, literally like overnight, in a sense. So like I literally was
we was doing what we was doing, and then like next week later, I'm like, yo, I kind of can't do this no more.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about that? Like,
Sure.
Because I respect the suddenness, because I wonder, sometimes I wonder about what could have been avoided in life in general if I allowed things to be a little more sudden. That's thing one. And then thing two, like, I think one of the reasons why it wasn't as sudden for me is because there's a part of me that was thinking like, yo, I ain't even talking no craziness.
Right.
Right. And I know with you, like, you weren't talking craziness in terms of like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you wasn't talking about shooting dudes up. You know what I'm saying? You wasn't talking about anything violent, anything, to, at least based on what I've heard. I feel like I heard a decent amount of your material in real.
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything that was like misogynistic. I didn't hear anything like crazy. So,
it wasn't like, overly misogynistic, but it definitely was.
Right. Okay, true. Right. I see what you're saying. Overly. Right. But a lot of it was like, you know, valuing the culture, having a good time, demonstrating your lyrical abilities. Right. Like it wasn't something where I was like, oh man, I could never have my mom listen to this. Right. Like it was nothing like that. Like did that reality where, you know what I'm saying, like you're not even like, you know, super profane. Mm-hmm. Right? Did that reality like produce like a challenge in your step or conversion?
Yeah, because a lot of it was more so how much I didn't acknowledge who he was, so to speak. So like a lot of that time period, and even before, I didn't really grow up in the church. So I would call him the big homie. And I would literally just be like, when something good happens, God is good. And that was it. I didn't go to church. I didn't actively seek a relationship. So when I was smacked in the face with like my Paul to Saul moment, it was like, whoa, I got to stop everything. Now, looking back, I probably could have did it a lot smoother, so to speak. Like it literally was abrupt. And I think a lot of people got caught up in that gunfire, those strays, so on and so forth. But to the music, no, it wasn't necessarily the music. But the way I've always did music was my life. Like it would always reflected what I was doing in life at that time. And when that changed, that's when the music changed. But just sometimes I make it sound like I was just this horrible thing, and it wasn't necessarily that. It just was, I know what I was living, and I know what I was saying, and I was seeing those things happen, and a lot of it was like, I was just dogging women, just to be bluntly, like, and I can hear the lyrics where I was referring to specific moments or experiences. Even when I would literally prophesy through negatively for things to happen, and they would happen, and wasn't the best of things to be happening. So that's why it's not as much of a negative connotation to it to now. When I first was talking about it, it would sound like I was just this demon. And no, that's not so to speak, but that's like, so like to your point, you kind of sound like you've always had some type of knowledge necessarily, and you could kind of sprinkle it through. If you heard me say something about God in a lyric, then I like find the lyric and action. So I think that's the difference, so to speak.
Do you think it's possible to be a unapologetic Christian and not reference that at all in your writing?
Absolutely. But I think your approach to music would be necessarily an extension of a character or some type of environment that you're creating. Now, I don't know about how you could be super flagrant and all of those things. I can't speak on that. I don't know if that's possible. I'm not saying that it isn't. I don't know. But like, I think of, for example, Rick Ross. Like, he created this character. I don't know who he is, as I don't even know his real name. So like, I don't know who he is, but I do know who the character Rick Ross is. Right. I'm sure that happens through, because it is an art form, and art is an extension of something that you're creating, or depending on how you look at it, being obedient to what someone is giving you. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely.
So I wanted to get in some of your projects. You do got a decent amount of material. I know you feel like you don't put out a lot. I feel like I don't put out a lot.
You're bugging.
Right, I know.
You're bugging. Like,
I know.
You got like 8 projects this year.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I don't do enough, but I wanted to jump on Carl Lucas, the quick tape, because that's something I've always been a fan of your material, but that was something I was a fan of, and I remember our convo about how some other stuff came out around the same time. But kind of what inspired that, and how was your time? Because I don't want to keep you.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good space. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of what inspired that. Talk about the process, like your process of writing.
Yeah. That well, those beats were ridiculous on the show, right? The show we're referring to is Luke Cage, and his government name is Carl Lucas, right?
Yeah.
And Ali Shaheed Muhammad and Adrian Young did a great job with those beats and creating the score for that show, right? In a way that was like gritty and real. It was just very noir, right? Like, and I was just like, yo, I gotta rhyme one of these beats.
Yeah, there was a Jadena verse that had me. I literally had one episode. Oh my Lord! I said, what? That's a tough song. That's definitely a tough song. Yeah, I wouldn't got that project just because of that verse.
He actually, I'd say like maybe a year before Luke Cage came out, he came to Rochester. Right, really? When Classic Man, it goes like a big festival. Okay. Rochester's like I've learned that Rochester's like a test site. Remember when
we get them early? We get them
early, right? Like, and so Classic Man had just blew up, and he was a part of a bill, and he performed Classic Man, and I heard Long Live the Chief, and I was like, yo, what is this?
Wow. Right,
this is tough, right? And then I didn't hear it again until Luke Cage. But yeah, the music in that show is fire. The beats were nuts, and I was like, you know what? Like, let me put out a quick project with those beats and just have it be very thematic and just demonstrate, like I say in the beginning, like quality over quantity, because it's 10 minutes, but there's like 7 joints where I'm going on for like a little over a minute. Yeah, right? We all have different themes, right? It was just fun. It was just fun to do, and I've been trying to. Because another thing that I feel like, back to the Christianity piece, one of the things that God is trying to get me to see is that I don't have to overthink everything, right? And one of that project was another step in trying to figure out how I can express myself articulately, lyrically, and deeply without going into this space in my brain that is very counterproductive, that isolates me, that just makes me just not as productive or sociable as a person, because I'm sitting there stressing around, like trying to get as layered and as possible. When there's ways of doing that without having the same kind of stress, and sometimes it's not even necessary to do that. So, like, the Luke Cage project was me just continuing to exercise that muscle. And there's still a lot of, it made me feel comfortable because I was like, yo, this is mad layered. And I didn't feel the same way I did 10 years ago, creating this level of layered comparison. Wow. And so I put it out, and then lo and behold, the big homie, who's one of my favorites from the town, Coach Parcells, I saw like the next day after me releasing it, something like that, I saw Luke P. And I was like, what is this? And sure enough, the project was Fitzwell that had a similar approach. And it was cool because we got to talk about it. But I know we've talked about how that can cause beef and conflicts, right? And even with our stuff, like I was telling you, I was like, oh snap! Like I had a similar design, but we're all artists and we all have similar influences. Therefore, we have similar ideas, and we could either be mad and have conflict about it, or be passive aggressive about it, or just build and talk about it. Like, especially if we have a relationship, because I spoke to Coach about it. I was like, yo, Coach, man, listen, my bad. Like, I had no idea you was doing this. Like, this just came out. And he was like, yeah, I was wondering what that was about, but I didn't trip because I know you. I know you wouldn't just, be like, oh, Coach doing this, I'm about to do this, right?
Right.
Because, as he says, like, A alike, B alike, C alike. So that's the story of the Carl Lucas quick tape. I'm thinking about doing another one too.
Yeah, that's powerful. So just BrandonEVWhite or Bushido, you get a beat. What's that writing process like? Is it quick? Does it take 2 months? What is that like?
It's transitioning from taking forever to just going in a natural flow with it. The song that we did, that you did the video for, Mr. Doubtfire, that was a song that I've been writing for a while because I just knew that it was gonna. I knew that it was gonna. I knew whatever it was gonna be powerful, and it was gonna be like cause me to have to look at some things I wasn't trying to look at, and I was gonna have to do it in a way that was not overthinking, because it was a real thing, real close personal thing, and that was gonna have to be in one shot. But I had to, the anxiety around doing something in one shot or writing something in one shot, like so it eventually got to the point where I was like, enough of this anxiety or worry around what it's gonna be, and I just wrote it out in one sitting. And that's not super common for me. Okay. It's getting more common the less I overthink things and the more I just put pen to paper. But if I get a beat and I'll do what I can to set a time to write for the song. More often than not, what ends up happening is if I have an idea that will be in my brain, I'll just write 2 bars real quick in my phone for it, and then keep it pushing, and then come across another 4 bars in my day or in my days, and then keep it pushing. Now, if it's like a deadline and I'm working with somebody, that's when I start to actually stop overthinking as much. Like one of the last joints I gave to the homie Illy Cut and Sebastian, the West Coast dudes that I work with from time to time, like he was like, yo, I have this beat, I got this song, they get it to me like 2 weeks or something like that. And I was like, all right, cool. And so I wrote the song, I wrote the verses out in like maybe 1 or 2 sittings. And then I wrote the chorus in like 1 or 2 sittings, and I just recorded it, and then that was it. And the other thing that's hard about this, as you know, if you got a job and this ain't your full-time job, and you got a job, you got a family, whatever have you, like it's hard to just be like, all right, I'm gonna sit down for this 2 hours and have the whole song.
Yeah, that's impossible for me.
Yeah, right. So that's typically how it moves for me.
Cool. So I'm about to get ready to wrap it up because I don't want to keep it too long. I have to ask you, what was your 2020? Like, what was your thoughts? How you would take it? And even deeper, because I'm specifically with men, and we kind of talked about it. Some of the pains and traumas and all of those things. Like, how was that for you?
2020 was a intense year. 2019 was like, I feel like it was like a prelude to the intensity, just collectively for everybody, because 2019 was no bed of roses either when you really think about it. But
nah, it wasn't.
2020 for me personally, and on a wider level, was a little tough because within like 2 weeks, 2 of my former students got killed. And then also another student, former student of mine, got convicted for murder. So, and then my grandmother had passed. Just like when you're quarantined, right, or when you're practicing social distancing, there's nothing left but you. So whatever you have been kind of allowing to float around in the air, maybe you try to take care of it, maybe you try not to take care of it. But like now that you're staying still, you have no choice but to kind of face those realities, sit with yourself. Yeah. And while I like to think that I do that a decent amount, you know, there are moments where I still caught myself like, dang, I don't do this as deep as I would like to do it or as I need to do it. It's been, and on the same token though, you know, I've been able to stay employed, which is a big blessing.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to lose more weight. I was able to, you know, treat my body better, trying to get like lava out here. You know what I'm saying? My diet has continued to increase and get better. You know, my time, intentionality with God has gotten better.
That's beautiful.
Right? But still, it's been a tough year, right? Or it was a tough year.
Yeah.
And you know, what's it called? What was I about to say about the year? Oh, that's right. Like in addition to 30 Rock, I'll be releasing a project that I'm still trying to figure out what the main name of it will be, but like it's a COVID journal.
Okay.
Where I'll be releasing a COVID themed album.
Yeah.
In addition to 30 Rock, the album. So I'm releasing 2 albums at the same time, like early spring. That kind of goes over what my personal experiences and my personal reflections on our society have been during this time period.
Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. I'm glad you were honest about that and open with us, those type of things, because I just think as Black men, we lack, I call it emotional education.
Sometimes we do.
We don't know how to channel and deal with certain things, and I'm learning that firsthand. So I thought that was important. Lastly, man, the way I end these is simple question: what's one thing you would tell a stranger to encourage them?
One thing I tell a stranger to encourage them. I'm trying to think about like what's ideal to say and what I'd actually say.
Yeah, whatever.
So yeah, if he went through it, he could use it. Is one thing that's been kind of sticking with me. And now in terms of the realism of how I actually evangelize, I may not, depending on the stranger, I may or may not say that.
Yeah.
But like it's like keep your head. There's a reason behind everything, or there's purpose in what you dealt with, or stay safe, stay blessed. You know, like it depends on the scenario of the stranger. So.
And then what's one thing you would tell a friend? And it's not necessarily evangelizing, just something to encourage somebody. And this is kind of going out to the world in a sense, like.
Yeah. Gotcha. Peace and progress. That's one of my ending lines in the Word Related podcast. Peace and progress. Like,
yeah, I saw that.
There are very few things more important than both of those things.
Man, that's so powerful. Peace. That's powerful. Like I took that one. Thank you.
No doubt.
All right, bro. Just let the people know where they can find you, your socials. If you got a website, you kind of alluded to what you got coming next, but if you want to specify a little bit more.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Bushido Garvey, Twitter, Glitch Tuxtable at Bushido Garvey. And I have a website that will be up and running Monday called Maya Claude. It's just the name of the website is called Maya Claude, the label and the learning. Like there's the label piece where I actually just put out my material. And then there's the learning piece where I actually provide education related consultation and services. So MayaClaude.com is what will be available as of Monday, 11/11. And just stay tuned for Mr. Doubtfire, aptly shot by the FreshNerd.
Yeah, man, that was such a dope experience, man. That song is probably, I hate to be biased, but it's probably my favorite song of yours for the moment. Just because I had to live with it, and I really appreciate what you did with your words on that, man.
Thank you.
So first of all, thank you again, bro, for doing this. I feel like we could have probably went another 5 hours.
Yeah, that's a fact.
I really appreciate talking to you, man. And we definitely stay in communication. Thank you for doing the podcast. And hopefully this will probably be out around the time your video come out. So
yeah, let me know so I can, share and do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and if you know a stranger or a friend that you think of fit, send them my way, bro.
Absolutely. Shoot, I might send Rob your way.
Yeah, man. Me and Rob need to talk anyway. It's been a while. I want to pull on his calisthenic techniques and all of that, man.
Yeah. Speaking of friends, like he's a big influence on how, the exercise regimen I've been trying to grow out over the past couple of years because Rob no joke. So
nah, not at all. I'm trying to get more pull-ups and dips into my regimen, so I gotta hit him up. So yeah, send him my way, bro. Have a beautiful day, man. Let the fam know I said send him my love and just thank you.
Absolutely, likewise, bro.
All right, peace.
Peace.